5 o'clock, and we're all here for the Land Use and Transportation Committee, LUTC.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we'll record. We've called the meeting to order. Just as a rule of thumb here, we have a very long agenda, so being to the point and concise is always appreciated. And so we'll get to our meeting in a second. I wanted to excuse Councilmember Walsh, who had to go out of town for a family matter. And you can see that this is important because the council president's here, the deputy mayor, my counterpart, Mr. Tran, and Paul is here also. So we're here to listen and make decisions. So the first order of business is public comment. And I have 2 sheets. And I'll call your name up, and if you could come over to the podium, you have 3 minutes to speak. And so right now we'll start, I'll call up Ian Morrison. And please state your name and where you're from.
Hope you don't mind. Ian actually asked me to go first.
Okay, well, we'll change it up.
James, some sequence. Yeah, so I'm Jameis Gwilliam.
So we got James first and Ian second.
Yeah, so I'm Jameis Gwilliam. I'm managing director with Merlone Geyer Partners. We're the owners of the Commons Mall. And we bought the property back in 2017. We've been interacting with staff on a number of different issues over the years and wanted to come and express our support of the code amendments that are going to be proposed on agenda item M this evening. Change is obviously incremental on a large property such as a regional mall like the Commons. There are leasehold encumbrances and REAs and Sound Transit building, light rail, and Target's parking lot and things that we have to work through. But as you've probably seen on the Sears parcel, we've executed from a leasing perspective, a successful program, bringing in Dick's Drive-In, Amazon, GSA will be taking their space on the second floor of that former Sears space. We'll be turning that over in the first quarter of next year. And along with this incremental change, we're planning for additional changes and being prepared. We want to be prepared to respond to changes in the market. We know that the city for a long time has identified our property as a location where higher density market rate housing could be developed, and that's something that we're in the process of exploring. We have hired a team, Ankrum Moyson Architects, Brumball Landscape Architecture, Packland, Transpo Group, and McCullough Hill, Ian Morrison, who will speak, to help us advance that plan, and we'll be coming in front of you in the next several weeks with a proposed master plan, and we hope to engage more meaningfully related to that plan. As part of that plan, we are likely to explore some of the provisions of the code that were not picked up in this code amendment process, either through a development agreement or through other means, particularly related to some of the parking requirements and affordable housing. But all in all, we appreciate what staff has worked on for these code amendments, and we're supportive of you supporting them. So just wanted to share that and wanted to express that support. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Now will be Ian Morrison.
Thank you, Councilmember Dovey and members of the council. For the record, Ian Morrison. I'm a land use attorney with McCullough Hill Leary here on behalf of Merlone Geyer. But I have had the pleasure of working with your staff and been before you with other development agreements, including the Intercorp development agreement with the Bally site, and then conversations about school impact fees. And I think what I was hoping to convey to you today is just 2 pieces of information as you are considering both this city center update and also the development agreement update. Number 1, you have tremendous staff. It has been a pleasure working with your staff in drafting and providing feedback as staff drafts for your consideration these updates, and providing the goal of a land use attorney and what we try to do with working with groups like Intercorp and Merlone Geyer and others is to try to convey a sense of predictability and fairness, that the city is getting quality development and public benefits, but also that it's a project that works economically and that provides for the ability ability for Merlone Geyer or those other developers to invest in the city of Federal Way. And I think the dividends that you have done as a city council with the Heartland report and updating some of your code around school impact fees was a positive investment. And the development agreement amendments that are coming forward that your staff has been working on are another positive investment. And that this city center update that you are considering tonight at Land Use and Transportation Committee is another positive investment. And part of what is happening here is you are building a story to be able to invest, attract capital, and there is more people calling me as a land use attorney to say, tell me about what's going on at Federal Way. But with that, I'll say, and your staff has been excellent to work with on that, this is always an iterative process, and there's always work to be done. And so while I think Merlone Geyer and many in the development community are excited about this set of city center updates that you have here, I think the other message is that the work is not done, and that there will be more to consider in terms of what the nuances of parking in the 21st century, especially in a transit-oriented community like you are going to become with the operation of light rail, what that means in terms of structured parking and the actual ratios and nuances, and the devil is always in the detail. And then I think the second thing that will always be a challenge, and it's a challenge that was recognized in the Heartland report that staff did, and the start of the work that you have done, is affordable housing is a need that is region-wide and is necessary that all cities and developers do their part. But again, dialing those ratios in and saying, is 5% the right ratio? Or as the Heartland report mentioned, is that something that maybe is readjusted to try to attract market rate development, is something that I think will be important. So our message tonight is thank you, and thanks especially to staff for the work to be done. But I think there will be more to be done in the next phases, either as future code amendments or possibly in development agreements, to look at turning those dials to continue to attract market rate investment in the city of Federal Way. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other in the public comment? Okay, is there anybody online? Okay, thank you all.
Chair Dovey, I received an email from Ann Gigi, who's the attorney representing the Wild Waves Concomitant Development Agreement item. That's item N on the agenda. She told me she was running late. I believe she does want to comment. I don't want to speak for her, but I think she'd love the opportunity to comment before that item if possible.
We can work that in. Just when they get here, we'll take a break and have public comment. Okay, before we get into our agenda, is there any committee business? Anybody have anything they want to bring up? Seeing none, we'll move to the first thing, which is approval of the minutes.
Chair Dovey, I move approval of the minutes October 2nd, 2023, as it was submitted.
And I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Now we'll move on to streetlight infill project, 85% design and authorization to bid. Kathy Davis. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Kathy Davis, Senior Traffic Engineer, here tonight to talk about the streetlight infill project. Just a little background reminders. This is the federal ARPA funding that was authorized last year. Kind of the direction was to go through a matrix of citizen requests that we had, about 175 or so, and try to build as many of those as we could. So, total project is about 84 locations, 150 streetlights. It appears we have funding for about half, the way we're looking at the way estimates are coming in for construction right now. So what we're going to do is a bid process similar to the overlay program, where we put them in groups and build as many of the groups as we can. We've tried to prioritize the groups by the criteria that we use to look at the streetlights, so things like traffic volumes, presence of school bus stops, that sort of thing. And then also look at some construction efficiencies. So if number 74 was right next to number 2, we'd build those at the same time rather than skipping around. Here is a kind of a broad strokes overview of all the locations. You can see there are some large roadway sections, some single lights, a few that fill in gaps, a couple full neighborhoods that requested streetlights, that sort of thing. Budget, just a reminder again, it's the ARPA funds, $2.15 million. This is an in-house design, so we're hoping to save a little bit of money there. And if we do a good job on the design, hoping to save a little money on the contingency, roll that back into the project, build a few more lights. Basic schedule, go out to advertisement mid-December, and given the holidays, we'll do an extended bid period about a month. Hopefully, construction would begin in the spring and wrap up by the end of next year. So, usual options for your consideration, basically proceed or not proceed. The mayor recommends to proceed with the project. And that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. Are there questions I can answer?
That was very good. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So you have 175 requests, citizen requests, 84 locations, and you're going to put in 150 streetlights?
Yes, ma'am.
The map that you showed is not in the packet. Will we get a list of where these streetlights are going? Because I've been getting questions from folks asking when and where this is going to start.
We could certainly do that.
And if someone isn't on the list, can they try to get on the list? I mean, can they call and plead to get on the list?
Well, we'll have to ponder that. Right now, we've started a second list, so this list is, call it closed, and then we've started another list for if additional funds become available, that sort of thing. But we could certainly look at the location and see how it ranks if needed, but again, we are trying to go out to bid in a very short time frame here, so
Will you bid on all the locations at the same time?
yes, ma'am.
So if we have 175, are those 175 streetlights that have been requested? Or is there more?
So current on list one, if you will, there were 175. We went back and looked at all the locations in the field, and there were some that had been installed with rental lights. And so we took those off the table just to avoid duplication. If there's money later, we can convert those to city-owned streetlights. So that ended us up with about the 84 locations that we talked about. And each location is basically a roadway segment from intersecting road to intersecting road. So some of those are several hundred feet long, some of them are 100 feet long. So that's kind of how that shakes out.
So my question is, if you're putting up 150 streetlights, but there was a request for 175, what would be the cost to do the other 25?
So the 150 is actually the total project now. Some of those locations fell off the list due to the earlier installation of rental lights.
Okay.
So to do the entire project, we are thinking it's about $3.5 million. And right now, we have the 2.15 in ARPA available.
So, okay.
Councilman?
Yeah, just real quick, is there an average price that usually a streetlight costs to install? I know the distance and everything makes a difference, but is there like a basic price?
Yeah. So this project's a little different just because it's a retrofit, so it ends up being a little more expensive than if you were, scrubbing the roadway down to nothing and rebuilding it from scratch. So these are fairly expensive, running between $12,000 and $20,000 per light.
Okay. Thank you.
Council President Coachmore?
Thank you, Kathy. So this is ARPA money that we're using. So normally the money would come from our general fund. So when the lights are installed, are these lights, they're not in neighborhoods, they're all on arterials?
There are some in neighborhoods.
Okay. So who pays for the lights when they're in the neighborhoods versus the lights on the arterials? For the ongoing,
The city would pay for all of those.
even in the neighborhoods?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I do know that in the past, the neighborhoods have paid for the lights that were requested in neighborhoods. For the ongoing electricity.
Okay, I can look into that.
Yeah, you should. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We need to be fair with everybody.
I just have one comment before we vote on this, and this is actually to you, EJ. When we started the overlay program a long time ago, it was a 20 or 30-year project. We were going to get through the whole city. We might think about in our next budget cycle, what does it cost to add lights So at least as a council, we've got an idea. We may not do anything, but hearing from Deputy Mayor Honda, you know, it's a gap between the 2 million and 3 million. It might be some long-term project we should at least ask ourselves about.
Sure, I can add it to the list of future topics to discuss when we
Okay,
get into
thank
the
you.
budget.
I have one.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
In my neighborhood, I know that we have requested streetlights down one of the streets that doesn't have any streetlights. And the police department for years have been telling us that it's a public safety issue. And so I certainly believe that, because there are things that happen on that street because it is so dark. And, you know, if we really want to respond to public safety, and I know we do, I think that this is a program that could be somehow worked into public safety, because having light, streetlights especially, will decrease some of that activity that hasn't been good in our neighborhood, and keep people safer, and people will feel safer. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember
Would you,
Forsmark?
sure, I seem to remember that Puget Sound Energy was the one who paid for this. If the neighborhood requested lights, that PSC would put in the light and the neighborhood would pay for that. If it's in the neighborhood. If it's in Arterial, then the city would pay for it. Oh, good, we have a friend coming to the phone.
Mr. Perez will help you out with that.
Good evening. Yes, historically, there was those that the neighborhoods paid for, which was the local street system. However, in an interest of fairness, because all new streets being developed, the city was picking up the tab for operation and maintenance of the streetlights. So we took over all of those as part of the franchise agreements, because those were funded through Lake Haven. The citizens paid Lake Haven on their utility bills to cover the cost of streetlights. So as part of the franchise negotiations a few years ago, we took that over and used the franchise fees to help pay for that.
So now we pay for all the lights.
We pay for all the lights except for a couple of HOAs that weren't doing it through Lake Haven.
Sure, so the installation and the ongoing,
Costs
thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward option 1 to the November 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, Kathy. We'll now move to NTS program project South 304th Street, Pacific Highway South to 28th Avenue South. Jason Kennedy.
All right. Thank you, Jason Kennedy, Senior Traffic Engineer. Tonight, we'll be discussing the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program from a project that got initiated in 2021, so it's been a while, but I'll kind of give you a little bit of background on how we got to where we're at. This is on South 304th Street between Pacific Highway South and 28th Avenue South. So the policy question tonight is, should the council authorize the installation of 2 speed feedback signs on South 304th Street between Pac Highway and 28th Avenue South? So the project study area, as shown here in the map, is, like I said, between Pac Highway and 20th Avenue on South 304th Street. And a little bit of background information on this, so kind of go back in time here. We originally received a petition under the old NTS program in July of '21, and as typical for a lot of these projects, we got concerns of excessive speeding, late night racing, loud noise, noises from cars racing, that sort of thing. So once we got the petition, we evaluated it. It's South 304th Street is a principal collector. And after data collection and analysis, it did meet the minimum requirement for inclusion in the program of 3 points. We collected the data in July of 21, and average ADT was between 4,800 and 5,072. The biggest thing here is the 85th percentile speeds were pretty good. 39.1 on the east end and 38.3 on the west end of the street. I can show you the complete scoring criteria kind of demonstrates the impact on the 85th percentile on the scoring. So we had the highest score on the table here is showing 2.5 points for the 39.4 miles per hour on the 85th percentile speed, and then the ADT scored a 0.5 points. There are no parks or schools fronting 304th, and we did have one speed-related collision in the 5 years, and that was the 5 years leading up to 2021 at that time. So we got a total score of 3 points. And I'd like to point out the posted speed limit is 30 miles per hour in there. So 85th percentiles, getting close to 10 miles over posted. So a little background just to kind of refresh, because it's been a while since we started this project. We had our first public meeting after it met criteria. We had a Zoom meeting in October 21. We had 9 residents attend. We also had traffic staff as well as Federal Way Public Schools in attendance because Wildwood is somewhat close by. As mentioned earlier, speeding was the main concern along 304th, but and there's some other points, but drag racing, loud vehicles at night. Another concern was general concern of safety while walking along the road. There are no sidewalks. Other comments came up, speed tables, installation of an all-way stop at 304th and 23rd Avenue South, or a traffic circle at the same location. Those were kind of the main comments that we got out of the public meeting. So since then, we had a revision to the NTS program. That was last year, summer of '22. And one of the key points I want to point out is in that process, we now have a restriction on vertical deflection on principal collectors, which again, that's what South 304th is, a principal collector. So that essentially eliminates speed tables, speed humps, that sort of thing. Additionally, we looked, and so in the process between the public meeting in 21 and to this year, not only did we have the revision of the NTS, but we also had to look at what we could do realistically within budget and that sort of thing. And traffic circles, even though that was one of the requests, we have a limited right-of-way there at that intersection, and then we also have other things such as drainage costs that would be much more costly than an NTS program could support, project could support. We also had the request for an all-way stop, and that's not warranted under MUTCD. So, given all those considerations, we felt like it was important for the public, the people who attended the first meeting, that we had a significant, change in how we were going to have to approach this, that we wanted to be fair to those who attended, to let them know, provide information, communicate. So we'd have a follow-up public meeting. So that was back in September of this year. And after, discussing, and most of the people that attended the first one also attended the second one, and we explained what the situation was and kind of how we got to where we're at. And ultimately, we decided that speed feedback signs, radar speed feedback signs, were probably the best solution in addition to some heavy enforcement. So that is essentially kind of where we landed. We've got the proposal, which is kind of shown here on the map, and basically, you may be familiar, we've got other speed feedback signs throughout, in various locations through the city. It'd be very similar in nature. They provide real feedback, information to the driver. They collect data on speed and volume, but they don't do any kind of, they have nothing to do with enforcement or automated enforcement, anything like that. We then also are asking our, traffic safety partners with the police department to help us out, and they've done actually a really good job already. I got a nice email from Officer Klein today, actually saying that they spent about 11 hours out there in the past few weeks, mostly in the PM peak rush hour time frame, and they issued 26 citations in those 11 hours that were speed related. So I appreciate, we all appreciate their efforts as well. So that's where we're at in terms of the proposal. So option one will be to install these 2 speed feedback signs, and option two would be to not do anything, no action. Now, the balloting process, so after we had the second public meeting, we of course then send out the proposed solution to them. We had a ballot process as always, and about 52 of the 177 ballots came back, which is about a 30% return rate. But overwhelmingly, you can see the data support the installation of those feedback with 90% support, which is also the same as what the staff proposes. So some budget considerations. Under the new budget process, we have $150,000 annually for NTS. Now, this project was initiated under the previous program, but we would still apply it to the current budget. We estimate about $10,000 for the purchase and installation of those signs. We do have one NTS project already programmed from 2019. And that one's about $30,000. That will be already constructed in '24. So in terms of that project in 2019 plus the one for this one, and then we also have 3 more projects coming along from 2023 under the new program, which we will be coming to council in early '24. We're estimating those to be about $60,000 in total costs. And we will submit all of those for approval in early '24. Having said all that, if you add all that up, which would leave us then approximately $50,000 of that $150,000 for any remaining projects in 2024. So that's where we're at in terms of what we're looking at for the budget. So our options to consider is to authorize the installation of 2 speed feedback signs on South 304th between Pacific Highway and 20th Avenue South. Or option 2, do not authorize installation and provide its direction to staff.
Deputy Mayor Honda, you have a question?
Yes, I do. So I know some folks who live along that road that walk their kids to the elementary school. And how is this going to make it safer just to have a sign saying how fast you're going? How is it going to make it safer for the kids to be walking to school?
Well, we've had some already some success with the speeds on Pacific Highway south of 359th that we've installed in the past few years. We've had a couple miles reduction in speeds there. And while we do admit that that there is some limitations on how much the speed feedback signs can do, the items that I listed before in terms of the physical infrastructure that we could do to South 304th. I mean, sidewalk alone is quite expensive, and right away and all the other costs involved. It doesn't make it something that we can do in the NTS project budget. But yeah, I understand your concerns on that. The speed feedback signs do hopefully provide, the information to the drivers to hopefully slow down, and on top of that, the enforcement to back that up as well.
Are the police there every day?
I'd have to check with Officer Klein and see what their status is. We've tried to ask their help, obviously, in a lot of locations throughout the city. They're spread thin, I'm sure, as you know, but I don't know if they're there every day, but they were out there for, according to his statistics, during a week, he was out there for 11 hours of emphasis patrol.
Which 26 citations seems like quite a lot.
Yeah, yes, it is.
And there's nothing we can do physically to the road to slow people down?
Not within the budget that an NTS project would support.
I am really concerned that someone's going to get hurt.
So any sort of if we wanted as a city to do something, we'd have to look at a capital project on that roadway we would have to acquire significant right of way to be able to do anything. So that's kind of outside the scope of this program to go in and do safety improvements in a neighborhood. But I mean, certainly, I mean, if we want to talk offline about what ideas you have, we can look at what would be involved in the project. But I think that's a much larger conversation than the NTS program.
Okay, I mean, these are little kids walking, and I know
Un-
that most of the
understood.
parents walk with them, but still.
No, I understand your point completely. I don't disagree with you, but it's just the magnitude of the cost of any sort of proposal like that is going to be substantially higher than the NTS program targets.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Can you go back to the actual map? I actually drive this road quite often, like
Sure.
daily pretty much, and I know exactly what you're talking about with speeding down that road. The sign on the eastbound, so is that literally coming from Pack Highway towards Military, or,
Yeah, so the one on the bottom of, that's an eastbound sign, so a sign facing the eastbound traffic.
Okay.
And then the one on the top, on the east end of 304, that would be, I know it's oriented looking that way, but I didn't want the way the graphic was, it would have been weird to turn it, but it would be facing the westbound traffic coming out, going westbound on 304.
is there a reason, because that's coming off of a hill, which I know is a little bit of speed, but I would have thought they would put more in the middle, and the other one coming from the westbound, that's right after a stop sign, so is there a reason why they were picked, those two spots were picked?
Well, so.
That stop sign really does, it used to be a stop, no, it's a stoplight now, it used to be a stop sign, so I mean, that really slowed down traffic there, but it feels like it's really close, like the opposite way, I feel like it's going the opposite way for how people would speed up and go faster. And then
So
see it.
generally, they're very close to where we actually installed the data collection equipment. So that's what the speeds are showing, then that's what they're going at in that location. So and in terms of, we do want to be careful where we put the sign in terms of, we don't want it too close to an intersection, and other various factors. But these were generally the locations we felt would be give people enough time to get off of say Pacific Highway, to turn on to 304th and get, their speed, it's not too close to Pacific Highway. Same thing with, coming off of Military and even 28th, that's generally a decent enough a distance that they're going to be able to gain their, full speed that they would be typically driving.
Okay, so that's actually where the equipment was tested for the
Yeah,
beach guys?
in the general locations, yeah. And, at the end of the day, these are still subject to their fine-tuned exact location once we get out, because there's a lot of consideration with utilities, utility locates and all kinds of stuff like that. So these are they still can be tweaked a slight little bit, but that's the general location where we want to install them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Before we ask a motion, I do have one question that Mr. McDaniel brought up. I drive that road quite a bit. Where the trees are now houses, and, you're dropping down into that dip. It just seems to me it might want to be back a little further, but you're the expert, so, because we got that traffic coming from that new development right where that sign is. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
Well, before I do that, if I may make a comment.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Well, thank you for the information. I tend to agree with the Deputy Mayor, what she said earlier about the sign. And to me, the sign is helpful, but if somebody want to raise or somebody want to, go over the speed limit, they would do that. I mean, there's no sign to stop doing that. So I would agree that we need to focus more on the enforcement side. So I don't know how this committee can advocate for that, or work with the safety committee and ask the police department to, have some kind of focus enforcement, so that we can perhaps change people's behavior.
Maybe we could bring that up with the Parks and Rec and
Safety.
make it on their agenda to talk about that. I mean, we can put signs and calm traffic, and then the other committee might be able to take it to the next step.
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So with that, Mr. Dovey, I move to forward the proposed option 1, 2 speed feedback signs on South 304th Street between Pacific Highway South and 28 Avenue South to the November 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And now it looks like Jeff's going to come up and you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. So your turn. Thank you. We're going to talk right now about Adaptive Traffic Signal Control City Center Phase 2 project acceptance.
Alrighty. Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members, council members. My name is Jeff Hahn. I'm the civil engineer for the City of Federal Way, and I'm presenting the Adaptive Traffic Signal Control City Center Phase 2 Project Acceptance to Committee. The policy question is, so the City Council accept the Adaptive Traffic Signal Control City Center Phase 2 constructed by Titan Earthwork as complete. Prior to the release of retainage on a public works construction project, the City Council must accept the work as complete to meet the requirements of the State Departments of Revenue, Employment Security, and Labor and Industries. The Adaptive Traffic Signal Control City Center Phase 2 project constructed by Titan Earthwork is complete. The final construction contract amount is $776,376. This is $79,732 below the authorized maximum contract amount. The options before committees are 1, authorize final acceptance of the Adaptive Traffic Signal Control City Center Phase 2 constructed by Titan Earthwork in the amount of $776,376 as complete. Or 2, do not authorize final acceptance of the Adaptive Traffic Signal Control City Center Phase 2 and provide direction to staff. And the mayor recommends option 1. And staff is available for any questions you may have.
I don't see any questions. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move to forward option 1 to the November 21st, 2023 City Council consent agenda for approval.
I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Jeff. Now, we'll move on to item E, which is citywide pedestrian safety improvements, approval to award.
Right. Chair Dowdy, committee members, council members, at this time, I would like to present the citywide pedestrian safety improvements bid award to committee. The policy question is, so the city council authorized staff to award the citywide pedestrian safety improvements project to the lowest responsible bidder and authorize the mayor to execute a contract. 9 bids were received and opened on October 4, 2023 for the citywide pedestrian safety improvements project. The lowest responsible bidder is Rain City Services with a total bid of $1,228,298.83. The total estimated expenditures for the citywide pet safety improvements project is $1,858,000, which includes design, construction, 10% construction contingency, construction management, and inspection. The available funding is $2,023,997 and is comprised of the following: grants from Highway Safety Improvements Program and a Fund 102 motor vehicle fuel tax. The option presented to the committees are, one, award the citywide pedestrian safety improvements project to Rain City Services, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $1,228,298.83, and approve a 10% contingency of $122,829 for a maximum contract amount of $1,351,129, and authorize the mayor to execute a contract. Two, do not approve the proposed award for the citywide pedestrian safety improvements project and provide direction to staff. And the mayor recommends option 1. And again, staff is available for any question you may have.
Yes, Councilman Tran?
Thank you, Chair. Jeff, once we execute this contract, how long does it take the contractor to complete the project?
I think we go into material procurements, sometimes 6 months, sometimes 3 months. But we are trying to get the contract ready, and we are hoping next year, hopefully about spring of next year, for construction begins.
Thank you.
Don't see any other questions.
Chair Dovey, I move to forward option 1 to the November 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to move to item F, the 2024 Asphalt Overlay Program, preliminary project.
At this time, I would like to present the 2024 Asphalt Overlay Program preliminary project list to committee. The policy question is, should the council approve the 2024 Asphalt Overlay Program preliminary project list and authorize staff to proceed with the design and bidding of the proposed 2024 Asphalt Overlay Program? Staff has developed a preliminary list of recommended streets for the 2024 Asphalt Overlay Project using the city's payment management system and field verification. The available funding for the 2024 Asphalt Overlay Project is $4,934,000 and is comprised of the following. Arterial program with real estate excise tax and motor vehicle excise tax. Residential and arterial program solid waste utility tax. 2023 carry forward budgets, utility tax for swim transfer, park transfer, and ADA retrofits transfer. The list of streets to be included in the 2024 Asphalt Overlay Program was selected using the city's payment management system and were verified by field inspection. And here's all the list of streets that to be incorporated into the 2024 overlay. The total estimated program cost of $5,622,800 is comprised of the cost for construction, 10% contingency, construction management and inspections, and in-house design. The estimated cost of $5,622,800 is a preliminary figure used for estimating purposes only. The 2024 Asphalt Overlay Project will be awarded within the available overlay program budgets. The anticipated dates for advertising is January 2024, and construction begins in April 2024. And here are the two options presented to the committees, and the mayor recommends option 1. And staff is available for any question you have.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, my quick question is for Alderbrook Park, is that for the parking lot?
There is an Alderbrook Park Trail. It's a pedestrian trail that has been severely damaged by roots, and we are helping parks to do pavement repair and also overlay.
Okay, so you're gonna re-asphalt the trail then? Is that what that
Yes,
section is?
Yes, it's gonna be a 2-inch lift after roots removal and pavement repair.
Gotcha. And then, just out of curiosity, do the parks, parking lots fall underneath the overlay projects, or do they fall into something else?
The parking lot probably not fall onto something else. This is just since it's going under the overlay project, the price is gonna be a bit cheaper, and so we're trying to help parks out for taking over this project.
Well, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. The residential overlay program is funded with our, the additional money that we're getting from, help me out here.
Utility taxes
Yes.
for
Yes,
solid
thank you.
waste, yes.
So are we spending all that we're bringing in, or can we do more than this?
So there's some carry forward money from this year, and that's part of what you saw on the screen tonight. But we are, yes, we are spending the total available amount. There's some fluctuation in the way the money comes in, so it's not necessarily spend every cent every year. You know, some of that money gets rolled into the schedules for the next year. But yes, we are spending everything that's collected.
And the Bayview neighborhood, that seems to me like a fairly young neighborhood, like under 20 years old. And they're gonna have, an overlay on that, on their streets?
Typically, the payment lasts between 12 to 15 years, and our payment management has been rating the Bayview under between the 50 and 60 ratings, PCI ratings. We typically, our plan is to overlay when we have a PCI ratings up between 55 and 65. And so Bayview falls within our plans, and so that's why we are planning to overlay Bayview as well.
Do you have, can you show the list to us of the ratings of all of the residential streets? Not tonight, but could you send that to us?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Jeff, I do have questions.
Yes, go right ahead.
So, the total, the estimated total program cost is about $5.6 million, and the funding available is only $4.9 million, which means we short about $700,000. So if we cannot find the $700,000 to make up the difference, which of this project we would have to be cancel or delay?
We're gonna select that schedule that has the highest ratings, and then we're gonna be push it back into a next year overlay. And or we're trying to find a schedule. Let's say is around $700,000. So we can drop that schedule and incorporate into 2025 overlay.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one question also. Part of the funding is REIT money, and REIT is down substantially this year. Is that going to cause an issue with the funding, or is this REIT that we've already collected?
No, this is REIT that's already been collected.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kochmar, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. So, Jeff, it would appear that when we approve this, we're approving the $4,934,000, because that's the money that's available,
Yes,
rather than the expenditure of 5.6.
correct. Yeah, we only approve with the available funding that we have for 2024.
Okay, is there a motion?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward option 1 to the November 21st, 2023 City Council consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And now, Jeff, we get to go to Citywide Adaptive Single Control System, ITS Improvements Phase 1, 2, and 3.
At this time, I would like to present the citywide adaptive traffic signal control systems ITS improvements phase 1, 2, and 3 project acceptance to committee. The policy question is, should the city council accept the citywide adaptive signal control systems ITS improvements phase 1, 2, and 3 project constructed by Northeast Electric as complete? Prior to the release of retainage on a public works construction project, the city council must accept the work as complete to meet the requirements of the state Department of Revenue, Employment Security, and Labor Industries. The citywide adaptive traffic signal control system ITS improvements phase 1, 2, and 3 project constructed by Northeast Electric is complete. The final construction contract amount is $1,793,838. This is $11,822 below the authorized maximum contract amount. The options we send to committees are: 1, authorize final acceptance of the citywide adaptive signal control systems ITS improvements phase 1, 2, and 3 constructed by Northeast Electric in the amount of $1,793,838, and 2, do not authorize final acceptance of the citywide adaptive signal control system ITS improvements phase 1, 2, and 3 project, and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1, and staff is available for any questions you may have.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, I got a simple one. What is the adaptive signal control system? What is it exactly?
I have a map. It's a bit small. It's you can see that.
Is this for connecting all the lights so they trigger each other, or?
I think we can
Here we
answer
go.
this
Never mind.
question.
Yeah, so actually, all these traffic signals are interconnected now. This takes it to the next level where instead of having static timing plans, the detectors communicate to a server that reallocates all the green time throughout the entire system to optimize the system.
Okay. And are they broken out by phase? So like phase 1 would control phase 1, but then
Those-
dig into it?
Those were our funding. So
Gotcha.
Phase 1 was, what, about 4 years ago, and then we got Phase 2 funded and Phase 3 funded, so.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the November 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
I noticed that I'm assuming the people that came in late were the ones who would like to have public comment. I can either do that when we get closer to that agenda item, or we could do it now. What would be your preference?
Thank you, Chairman Doby. My name is Ann Higgy, and I'm land use counsel for Eleanor Botanic Parks. I'm happy to wait until we're.
Okay, why don't we wait till we get, well, we'll wait until we get to that agenda item.
All right,
Thank you. Okay, we're now 2022 Storm Pipe Repair Project. And
All right, good evening. I'm Christine Mullen, Engineering Manager for the city. I'm here for the 2022 Storm Pipe Repair Project Acceptance. The policy question is, should council accept the 2022 Storm Pipe Repair Project that was constructed by Road Construction Northwest Incorporated as complete? City Council must accept the work as complete in order to meet the requirements of Department of Revenue, L&I, and the Economic Security Department requirements. The authorized maximum contract amount for this project was just over $340,000, and the final construction contract was just under $325,000. So we are roughly $17,000 below the authorized contract amount. Here's the two options for you. The first one is basically to authorize acceptance, and the second one is do not authorize acceptance. And the mayor recommends option 1 to authorize final acceptance of the project. Any questions?
Okay, seeing no, Deputy Mayor Honda, I see a question.
Thank you. So several of these items we've talked about tonight have come in under the cost that, so where does that funding go to that we're not spending on these projects?
It typically rolls back into our capital fund and then will be allocated to other projects in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we add them up to 800,000 so they can do more overlay, right?
Or streetlights.
Or streetlights. That's another discussion another day. Okay, do I have a motion?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward option 1 to November 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we will move to the former Bridges, excuse me, barn demolition project. It's Jared, right?
Yes, good evening. My name is Jared Larson. I'm the operations manager for the city of Federal Way. Tonight I'm presenting the former Bridges Barn demolition project for project acceptance. Policy question, should the council accept the former Bridges Barn demolition project performed by Baroni Construction Incorporated as complete? Help if I talk forward. This is located on the south end of town, just north of South 373rd Street at the end of 8th Avenue South. The final construction contract amount was $81,000, $81,078.74. Remaining amount is $34,146.52. Options considered, authorize acceptance, or options 2, do not authorize acceptance and provide direction. Are there any questions?
Okay, seeing no questions. Sorry there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, actually, it's.
Council President Kochmar, you have the floor.
I'm giving you a bad time. So I'm just wondering, could you explain what the Bridges Barn project is so people understand? Because
So that was a demolition of an older barn to just open up the space. We were having issues with trespassing and people vandalizing the property, so it was better to just remove the structure, and now it's back into its native wetland area.
Sure, but where is it located? I mean, is it on city property?
So this is, yes, this is on city property. This is, if you think southwest of Todd Beamer High School. So if you're on 373rd Street eastbound, just east of the Vineyards, if you head north onto 8th Avenue South, it's at the end of the road, right next to KC Staples.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion?
Yeah, before I move to the motion, I just want to compliment for the good work that you guys did, because this is a 29% below the authorized maximum contract amount. So that's substantial, 29%. So good job.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
With that, Mr. Dovey, I move to forward option 1 to November 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll now go to Transportation Demand Management Implementation Agreement with WSDOT. And it's Dikasha?
It's Diksha.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Diksha Nagaraj. I'm the transportation planner, and today we're here to discuss the Transportation Demand Management Implementation Agreement with WSDOT for the 2023 and 2025 biennium. So the policy question is, should the council authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Washington State Department of Transportation, allowing the state to reimburse the city its share of technical assistance funding for implementing the state commuter production law? So a little about the commuter production program. We receive funding from WSDOT for developing and implementing CTR programs as required by the state law. The intent behind this program is to require local governments in those counties experiencing the greatest automobile-related air pollution and traffic congestion to develop and implement plans to reduce single-occupant vehicle commute trips. And the law helps establish employer-based programs that encourage alternative modes of drive-alone commuting. The options before the council are to authorize acceptance of the agreement or to do not authorize acceptance of the agreement. Mayor recommends option 1. Any questions?
Okay, I see no questions.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed option 1 to November 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to go to item K, ordinance 2023 annual comprehensive plan. Cheney.
Hi, good evening, Council. I'm Cheney Scotson, Senior Planner, and I will be presenting on the 2023 Annual Comprehensive Plan amendments. There are no financial impacts or costs to the city for adopting the proposed comprehensive plan amendments. All the time spent implementing the permitting aspects of this ordinance will be subbed by existing staff. And this is just some background. The city is allowed to update our comprehensive plan or amend it on an annual basis, and that's kind of what we're doing. This isn't part of our periodic update. That would be next year. That we'll be doing every 10 years. Here on the screen is the procedural summary that we've done as part of this 2023 comp plan amendments. There's multiple colors here because the scope of what is being amended as part of these 2023 amendments has changed. So beginning, we initially started with topics surrounding city center and downtown. And then later added some of rezone and redesignation of some South King Fire and Rescue property. So that's in red. The blue is the procedural summary for our city center related steps. And then the notice of public hearing and the last few steps here are in black to demonstrate that they cover both of the topics. So, in summary, we can summarize the 2023 annual comprehensive plan amendments as one bucket the first bucket being amendments to our text, goals, policies pertaining to city center, downtown, the TC3 redevelopment plan, and our commercial enterprise zone. So that's changes to the text in multiple chapters. The second big category here is designating a downtown architectural overlay. That would be visible on our map and also reflected in our code. 3 would be changing the comprehensive plan designation and zoning for TC3 property and the Hillside Plaza, which is just north of there. And then another change in comprehensive plan designation and zoning of some property owned by South King Fire and Rescue east of I-5, north of 320th. Beginning with the first topic, some of our goals, policies, text changes related to city center and downtown. So you may notice in the packet that the goals and policies have moved around a little bit in the city center chapter. The goal of this was to categorize them and make it a little more digestible to understand, and also assign kind of topics. So what wasn't there before and is now or being proposed is having a kind of like a subtopic of a high-performing regional growth center, designing a dynamic downtown, public spaces and community facilities, multimodal transportation network and supportive development pattern, and minimizing environmental impacts. A common theme or thread in these amendments to the city center chapter include more active language. So instead of encourage, using words like require, being less passive. For an example, a goal or existing goal or policy says develop land use patterns. So there's kind of been like a refocus on these goals and policies to like what is within the city's responsibility and our role here. So we adopt land use regulations. So let's make it very clear and easy to implement these goals and policies and actions within the city's responsibilities. And also be updating any vagueness to be clear, objective, and descriptive. So I'm going to go through just a couple examples. An existing goal says, develop land use patterns that will encourage less dependency on single occupant automobile. And some proposed language for this goal would be establish land use policies and development regulations that concentrate higher density and mixed use developments near accessible transit that will encourage less dependency on the single occupant vehicle or automobile. Another example, City Center Goal 11, create policies and regulations to encourage more efficient use of parking facilities and to foster new, innovative, and creative parking solutions. This is kind of reflects the more strength in the language chosen. Adopt policies to strengthen development regulations to require more efficient use of parking facilities and allow for innovative and creative parking solutions. Under the new subtopic of a high-performing regional growth center, the existing City Center Policy 7 reads, allow for a variety of uses and mixed-use developments within buildings or complexes, ensure that mixed-use development complements and enhances the character of surrounding residential and commercial areas. The proposed policy reads, plan for and require an appropriate variety of uses within the city center. Encourage that mixed-use development incorporates community amenities that enhance the character of the surrounding residential and commercial areas. Policy 10 reads, continue to develop land use regulations that encourage the city center to accommodate higher density residential uses accompanied by residentially oriented retail and service uses. And the proposal is to require new development and redevelopment in the city center to meet minimum standards for scale, intensity, design, to optimize infrastructure investment, maximize proximity to amenities, and enhance community character. These are new goals and policies that don't currently exist but are being proposed. So goal 13 is to cultivate a dynamic and thriving downtown that serves as a vibrant social, cultural, and economic heart of the community and promotes a distinct community character and civic identity. Policy underneath that goal is to establish a downtown overlay, to establish a clear downtown boundary that fosters a sense of place, promote a cohesive downtown character through adoption of recognizable architectural and streetscape design standards and development regulations that both reflect the unique character and history of the community and create an inviting and memorable environment. And lastly, foster partnerships between the city, private sector, and community organizations to facilitate the development of community-oriented events, festivals, and community activities in the downtown that bring residents and visitors together and contribute to the downtown's vibrancy. Transitioning away from the goals and policies to some text amendments. So the City Center chapter, the comprehensive plan, describes the intentions with the TC3 redevelopment plan. There are some minor amendments here that are intended to not pigeonhole exactly what needs to occur on this property, but rather be more reflective or respond to market demand and removes any potential barriers for the redevelopment plan and the execution of a development agreement for TC3, and also can be used to rectify any inconsistencies between the comprehensive plan chapters relating to the vision and implementation of downtown redevelopment. So the first part is adding the word potential. So it's uncertain whether we can get a hotel on TC3 and or for example, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we're adding potential. And then below you'll see it says including but not limited to following potential components. And then some other strike through language, like for example, the 1 acre of transit-oriented development, 1 acre for transit-oriented development located west of the transit center. That's property that we ended up selling to Sound Transit for the expansion of the garage. So that's no longer accurate. So that's a reason for that amendment. Another text amendment here in red for as it's related to the South King Fire and Rescue property. There's a amendment to Land Use Policy 38 that reads, "Do not allow heavy industrial uses on properties that adjoin low or moderate density residential zones." Whereas prior, it didn't say low or moderate density. The reason for this is to respond to the proposed changes in the comprehensive plan designation and zoning for the South King Fire and Rescue property north of South 320th Street, just east of I-5. This is the second category, or the second kind of purpose behind the amendments, is designating a downtown architectural overlay. On the left here is a map showing that boundary, including the commons, the future light rail station, the surplus property owned by TC3, the Town Square Park, the parking garage, TC3, and the Hillside Plaza to the north. So the reasons for the proposed change, establishing that downtown architectural boundaries, to be able to define downtown, to say what's in it, and then to apply and implement minimum development regulations and architectural standards to start building a cohesive outcome of what we can expect for redevelopment. Also build civic identity and promote and enhance community character. The third amendment includes the rezoning and redesignation of some city-owned property, TC3, and the property due north of there, Hillside Plaza, from city center frame to city center core. So the map here above is the current, and below shows the proposed. So dark purple is both the city center core zoning and designation. So this map works for both the comp plan designation and zoning. The reasons for these properties highlighted in yellow, TC3 and Hillside Plaza, to be rezoned and redesignated is the proximity to past city investments and to future light rail station, and the opportunity that we consider the redevelopment potential, capacity, and timing of TC3 and Hillside Plaza. And also being within that downtown overlay boundary, we'd like to apply the same standards and minimums and expectations to these properties. The last the last comprehensive plan amendment is to change the designation and zoning for some property owned by South King Fire and Rescue. Here's, you can see on the map, just east of I-5, north of 320th Street. Orange, the orange zoning here is for multifamily. So the comprehensive plan designation is multifamily, and the zoning is RS 2400, which means 1 unit for 2,400 square feet. And the proposal is to change that orange to bright pink, which is our CE, our commercial enterprise designation, and our commercial enterprise zone. And the reasons for this is it was a request from the property owner. And given the location along South 320th Street and proximity to I-5 interchange, the property could be well suited for employment uses. Rezoning this property for employment will help the city with its employment targets of 20,260 by 2044. And also this is, we've received a number of pre-application conference, requests for this property for the outcome of multifamily, and it's kind of limited because of the BPA corridor in the back. So this, it's kind of a complex site, or has some impairments or impacts to it. So like I said, the BPA power corridor lies on the north of these properties, providing significant, this kind of creates a barrier between the unincorporated King County to the north, which is some single-family residences. But also the BPA corridor can impact the redevelopment potential on this property. So those are the four kind of categories I've kind of outlined, and here's the factors to be, well, in your packet, there's a in-depth analysis on how these categories or these topics consider the following topics for being able to amend the comprehensive plan and how they meet the comprehensive plan criteria for amendments. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I wasn't planning to go into too much detail. The 2023 comp plan amendments were presented at a public hearing in Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission recommended forwarding the proposed amendments to City Council for approval, and staff recommends approving the proposed amendments as forwarded by the planning commission, and the mayor recommends adopting the ordinance that contains the comp plan amendments. Any questions?
Oh, I'm sure there'll be a few. Let's start with Deputy Mayor Honda, because she's got her light on first.
Thanks very much. The downtown overlay boundary, can you put that up again, please?
Absolutely.
So why doesn't it include the shopping center where Trader Joe's is and all those stores?
That's a good question.
Thank
So
you.
like our city center core is like 200-ish acres, and then this boundary here is 120 acres, I believe. And the idea, or the purpose behind this is, we have been, our vision for this area and our regulations for this area and our planning for this area has been very broad brushed. Everything applies to the entire area. And acknowledging the influence that the light rail station should, and we anticipate to have in this area, we want to capitalize on that and identify we chose this boundary based on the synergy we think we can cultivate that's ignited by the light rail. So like the Commons property to the south, being the largest property owner, has a lot of redevelopment potential. TC3 in the process of a development agreement, and Hillside Plaza to the north being some may consider ripe for redevelopment. We wanted to select a boundary that these efforts could kind of lead into like a larger effect than across the entire entire zone, or across the entire regional growth center. We've also talked with a lot of these property owners and around like, well, what type of redevelopment potential do you see in the future? And those conversations, at least with this area, wasn't super engaged or super eager to discuss redevelopment. And so part of this was, okay, well, we want to start somewhere, especially where we think things are going to be changing soon, so that those can be done in a way that's cohesive, or kind of build some unity or some cohesion. But that doesn't mean that like different parts of our city center core and our city center frame shouldn't have the same level of attention we're paying to this downtown boundary. You know, I think we're feeling like we need to catch up and get ahead of the light rail station opening, and that's kind of what we're doing. It's like, okay, let's focus on this area. But there will be goals and policies and implementing actions as part of the comp plan update that says, okay, well, we need to focus on other neighborhoods in the city center as well that deserve this much attention and this much curation of thought and planning. But we wanted to take a smaller bite now for the areas that we are like highly anticipating redevelopment. If that answers your question.
It doesn't, well, it does in a way, but it also doesn't, because the area that is left out is extremely busy. You know, those retail locations are extremely busy over there, and at one point they may want to redevelop to create more areas for retail, maybe go up instead of just, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me like it's just cutting off a big portion of what our downtown core is.
Of what our city center core is, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so like that core has been planned for as a complete picture. Like it is not broken up into smaller pieces. And there's guidance in the comp plan that says, think about this in smaller pieces, create districts, create neighborhoods. And so we want to create the first neighborhood based on what we know about like what we are doing right now with TC3 and what we anticipate that's going to happen with Hillside Plaza and the light rail station on the corner of 23rd and 320th, and then the Commons Mall. But we didn't receive that level of intensity or awareness or eagerness for redevelopment outside of this boundary. It doesn't mean that these other areas won't redevelop. We hope they will. But in terms of like this swing of things, these are I don't want to say top priorities, but top of mind for like anticipating change.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in just before I go to Mr. McDaniel there. Deputy Mayor has a good point. I don't see why we don't make that square. To me, that's like a Midwest town where you got a train track running down the middle, and you got two different rules on what side of the track you're on. And if we're gonna make the change, why wouldn't we take that blue line all the way to 99 and come all the way to 99? Because the investment that's gonna go in the L versus what we're gonna have on the other side of that L on here, we're gonna regret that we didn't make it all the same. That's just my opinion. I mean, you're the experts, but I don't see why we can't, unless there's a great argument, make that a little bigger.
Maybe Keith has a great argument.
Well, I think I'm just gonna, good evening, council.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna kind of just go over some of the things that Cheney mentioned earlier. So part of what we're trying to do here is to capitalize on those properties that we see as transitional in terms of their redevelopment potential. So right now, we obviously know Sound Transit surplus property, TC3, Hillside Plaza. We've talked to that property owner. They've got consultants right now working on approaching us for a development agreement for that. We know the Commons have been talking since I started working here in 21. They've been talking about redeveloping their property. So we know all of that is happening. Snitzer Properties, you know, where Trader Joe's is, it is, I think, what you'd call a higher functioning retail center within our kind of city center area. That property owner does not have vision at this time for redevelopment. So that doesn't mean in 10 years, in 15 years, sometime down the road, it might want to transition. But right now and for the foreseeable future, it's going to be very car-oriented. Where the other properties, we're trying to foster much more of a pedestrian-oriented, vertical mixed-use project and properties that will then start to develop that visual sense of a downtown. So this will seem more like a fringe for quite a while, but those boundaries for downtown, right now, we don't have a downtown. We have a city center, and when we talked to the community about where downtown was, some said the Commons, some said we don't have one. And so what we're trying to do is create an initial recognizable footprint for us to have a downtown. And if at some point we're successful, and hopefully we are, there will be more properties wanting to be part of downtown because it will have that prestige of higher potential rents and higher desirability because of the level of detail and quality that's going into that area. But I think keeping it smaller to start with is a better strategy than kind of just let's take the whole area in now, because as Cheney said, I think the more we disperse our efforts, the less kind of effective it will be.
Councilmember McDaniel?
I mean, that was actually my first question, was going down this path. What does it benefit to be a team player who's in the downtown overlay? How does that, you know, what is the difference between being in it and not being in it as a business owner? Because I know quite a few businesses are in this little section right now, and not as many are out of it. How does it benefit one way or the other that, you know, they want to be in it or not in it?
Yeah, well, so part of that is going to be covered in Keith's presentation about the development regulation amendments that are being proposed.
Okay.
So setting different standards, setting some different rules. I think also, like, there's a lot of city investment in this boundary. Like, there's Town Square Park, there's the steps, there's the PAC, there's what will eventually happen with TC3. There's, you know, regional investment with Sound Transit and the light rail station. I think this area has a lot of focus on it already, and I think that there's I don't know, a sense of marketability or desirability in this area.
But the only thing that differentiates these two guys is a street. So, I mean, but physically it's only a street. On this picture, there's a block line that's actually saying that street makes a difference. So I'm just trying to understand, like, the benefit to the businesses that are in that section versus not. Is there more potential money that the city's willing to put into those projects? Or, I mean, I'm trying to understand that part of it.
There's the past money that the city has put in, right? Like the investments in Town Square Park and the steps and the PAC. There's potential future investment, like we're proposing the dip at 21st. So, like, I mean, while that's still under a feasibility study, but like to Keith's point about connecting that tight net walkable network, like, it'll be much more beneficial to concentrate those efforts in a smaller boundary and achieve it than on separate corners or different edges. And I guess, like, over time, as those improvements and investments are made, and those, whether it's public or private, as redevelopment occurs, you'll be able to see or experience the compact, or the change in a compact area.
Okay. Maybe this, I'll ask a couple other questions, maybe they'll help illuminate me on this one. So parking is one of my questions. We've talked a lot about Federal Way in the past of being strip malls, flat parking. Does it make a difference where I'm at if I want to go with multi-story parking, more the garage, or a different kind of mindset? Because I saw that one of the write-ups you had was changing and thinking out of the box, thinking on parking situations.
Yeah, so Councilmember, if I could step in just for a second here. So there's going to be two presentations with respect to this downtown architectural overlay tonight. The first is Cheney's, which is changing our comprehensive plan map to establish where the boundary is. The second one is going to be Keith's presentation, which is going to talk about what the rules are within that new boundary that we're planning on creating.
Is he going to talk about the?
And so there's going to
SEPA
be discussion in Keith's presentation about what the parking requirements will be within this boundary area. And so I think you're going to get more specificity if that makes sense.
Item M.
A couple of items down the line with respect to, for instance, how the parking regulations might differ within this downtown architectural overlay or city center core or otherwise.
So that would be explaining some of the benefits of being in that boxed off section right now?
Some of that, yes. So anyway, that's not a we don't want to answer your question right now response. It's more of you'll get some information now, but expect you'll get more information in a couple agenda items as well.
Will SEPA be part of that too? That was one of the things I was going to ask about. Is I know SEPA was part of the beginning parts, and I had just gone to a meeting recently where they talked that the state's looking at, SEPA seems to be duplicating some of the already requirements that cities have. Is that something that's going to be continuing on, or is SEPA going to be adjusted in the future too? I don't know what section that's going to go in.
Planned action?
So that's a little bit of a murky question in that we received a draft House bill today that's talking about changes to facilitate development around transit-oriented development. And one of the things that it's suggesting is that SEPA would be categorically exempt for any project within basically a half-mile walking distance of a light rail station. So your question of SEPA, so SEPA right now is what it is. We've increased some of our thresholds for things that would be SEPA exempt, but the state's looking at that as well right now. So that will be, I think, a stay tuned question. Right now, there would be SEPA required for any project within our city center core and downtown. And that might change soon.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, but there's nothing in this downtown architectural overlay or in the city center code stuff that would affect how SEPA works in this area. So in other words, there's no modification to that process that's being proposed.
I'll say the rest of my questions for you then.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Honda, then Council President Kochmar.
Oh, I've already, she can go.
Oh, your light's still on, that's why.
Yeah, I have another question,
Well,
but.
go ahead.
Okay.
I called you.
Thank you. So, looking at this map, right across from the PAC is a very large space that is prime for redevelopment. Why isn't that in here? I would think that we would really want to be encouraging that to be in this redevelopment area.
So the empty home and home store, we've
Yep.
tried to contact the property owner multiple times, and they've been completely non-responsive. And so I don't disagree with you, there's an opportunity there, but without really having a conversation with the property owner to understand where they want to see that property go in the future, I think we left it off the table because it was just a completely unknown. And we've tried for 2 years, and so has Tanya, I know, tried to get in touch with that property owner.
This does really bother me for, I guess I'll talk to you later about it offline, but I would like to see
So again, I would urge the council to think of this as a first step in designating a downtown for the city. I don't think it needs to be a final step. I think this boundary can change as properties kind of ebb and flow over time. I think to Councilmember McDaniel's point, like what's the value of being inside the boundary? There's only a value if we actually are successful and create that dynamic area that we're really trying to get with our downtown. Then I think everybody's going to want to be in. But until we achieve some level of energy, I don't know that there is a benefit, and we can get to that when we get to the actual code differences between city center core and downtown in a couple agenda items.
Yeah, and if I might just add a couple sentences to that as well. I think this is important in how you think about what's going on in the downtown architectural overlay. For the most part, what's going into the downtown architectural overlay are higher standards for the development that will be in there. And those are higher standards that necessarily will likely be more expensive for a developer. And so the reason that you keep on hearing Cheney and Keith talk about targeting areas that are ripe for redevelopment now is because there are extra burdens that developers will have to pay in order to comply with the architectural requirements of this area. And so if you're placing heightened architectural requirements on properties that aren't even enthused about redeveloping right now, that might be difficult. It might actually cause them to not redevelop, potentially. So I just want to put that additional perspective in there.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
before I comment, go ahead, Councilmember
no.
Fred.
So I know that Sound Transit is going back to the legislature to ask for more money. So I'm wondering how that's going to affect our development. I'm assuming it won't, because we should be under the former amount that was already agreed to.
I'm not very familiar with the new request for money, but the Federal Link extension is scheduled to begin operations in
So we're-
2026, and
we're
I don't know
already-
if that's contingent on any of this.
Yeah, probably is just for future projects. So, but it would appear to me that this is the appropriate time to send out letters of interest to folks to name our performing arts center like McCaw Hall. I mean, I don't think they're just going to come in and offer. I think we have to actually send out letters of interest explaining what's going on in the downtown, and, you know, this is the appropriate time, or maybe an ideal time, to name the PAC. And then a suggested amount. I don't know who's in charge of that, whether it's, who would do that? I'm sorry, what?
So generally, Autumn is in charge, from a staff perspective, in charge of kind of managing the operations of the PAC. So between parks, and I know Tanya also has her kind of foot in the kitchen in terms of talking about naming rights, but that is something, and to your point, Council President, as we start to move some pieces along and actually start to build some things, like I could see by the time we actually start construction on the Civic Plaza right east of the PAC, and you'll hear about that as part of the TC3 presentation on Wednesday this week, that will be the key time to start to say, okay, let's now start to leverage some of the assets we have, like naming rights for the PAC.
Yeah, when you mentioned Schnitzer, even though Schnitzer's is outside of this particular, I mean, somebody who has interest in our downtown might be, I think you just have to talk to Tanya and Autumn about presenting the idea to people, just to get the ball rolling. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple questions, if I may. A slide, well, first of all, on the comment that it's a higher standard to be in the downtown, I think that I just heard over there. I mean, I think if we're going to have the vision and that's higher standard for the area that's in blue, I really believe we should expand it to that whole square area. We can have that debate maybe later, but we've been talking for a long time, and you've done a great job getting us to here. We have developers who want to develop. We got things happening, but I don't know. that area that it's going to be harder to come back later and say, oh, by the way, you want to redevelop whatever it is in that area, and we change, they don't know what it is today. It's going to be harder in the future. And I think we should be more consistent. I mean, if I look at Federal Way, of all the years I've been here, that whole square would be the place that the higher standard should be. And that's maybe a discussion before we pass this, but I'm not convinced yet, based on what I've heard, that we shouldn't make it bigger.
So,
I understand the argument.
no, I guess I have a question for you. So then why stop at Pack Highway? Should we extend and include east of Pack High, or west of Pack Highway?
No, I'm just, when I look at the map, you go up west, you go up Pack Highway and you come straight across and you take that, to me anyway, that little rectangle that's not in it should be in the area.
Okay.
But that's just, I mean, I'll listen later, but I'm just saying, before I vote for it, I'd want to know why we didn't do it. If we're going to have a high standard, we should have the high standard for the whole area.
Okay,
Okay.
so I guess Keith will get into this.
And we don't have to debate that now, because this is going to come back to the council unless, because I don't know if we can decide that right now and here.
So why don't we do this? So I've heard at least 2 suggestions to square this off. So why don't we put together a memo for when this comes back to full council with 2 options and rationale for why option A versus option B, and then you guys can just pick. And at the end of the day, it's your downtown, so.
Yeah, right, and you're the experts to give us the advice, and then we can make a decision based a little more. Okay?
Absolutely.
Now, I do have one other question. I don't remember what slide it was. I think it was the one that said before TC3. It's a change where you said, I don't know, it talked about community organizations.
Oh, these design a dynamic downtown policies?
Yeah, CP3 13.3, where it says foster partnerships between city, private sector, and community organizations to facilitate the development of community-oriented events, festivals. I don't know, when you put, maybe I'm misreading it, but when you put community organizations there as part of the decision-making process, that is scary to me. That is like the third leg of a stool that you don't want. I mean, somebody could, maybe I don't understand why it's there. Could you explain why community, if I'm reading it wrong, are community organizations going to help determine what the council and the private sector want to do? Is that what that means?
So this policy is around like fostering partnerships. So like within like what's in the city's role and responsibilities, right? Like we've invested in our park and, right now we have this town square park and our steps and our pack. We've built facilities. We've invested in infrastructure. It comes down to the people and I think the organizations that help add vibrancy and occupy those spaces, those public spaces that create community or community events like a multicultural festival or our farmers markets, these types of things that like the partnerships would need to be forged or created or maintained to utilize those investments and those spaces for.
So what you're saying is that will be, community organizations will have input in how the facilities are used, not what gets built.
Yeah, this is fostering partnerships between the city, private sector, and community organizations to facilitate the development of community-oriented events. So this is around like the use of public spaces. Like right now when an organization wants to have an event at a park, a special use permit.
Chair, I don't think there's anything in the language here that would require us to agree to any specific language or any specific proposal from a community organization. I think the idea is we get into a partnership. What specifically that partnership is, the city has all the power to determine what that partnership is.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand it. Let's see, EJ, you had a comment, I think?
I was just going to clarify the Sound Transit question that I think the council president asked. So all the funding for the Federal Way Link extension is secured. I think the news you may have heard is there's a question of pushing back and funding related to the Tacoma Dome Link extension that's been floating around for I'm going to say ballpark a year to year and a half, that question that Sound Transit's still working on. That's the conversation about additional funding, would be delaying that future project. But the one that's under construction is fully funded.
Yeah, that's why, thank you very much, CJ. That's why I was worried about it, because we become the end of the line if they don't continue forward.
You are absolutely correct.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Do we have a motion?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on November 21st, 2023.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Cheney.
Will we get the memo before that meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a understanding. We'll have that before we get to the next meeting. Okay, now we're authorization to enter into an interlocal agreement with King County Conservation Future Funds tax levy grant. Kent Smith.
Good evening. So yes, Ken Smith with the Public Works Department. Good evening. This is authorization to enter into an interlocal agreement with King County for Conservation Futures tax levy grant funding. So just quick background again, this is related to a few parcels for purchase for conservation property. The three on the right are the parcels to purchase, and then on the right, sorry, on the left are the parcels to purchase, on the right are the parcels we currently either have ownership or partial ownership of through easements, along with a few washed out properties in the school district property. For the grant funding, it is a total of up to 1.5 million in funding with a 1.5 million match from the city, depending on the cost of the properties. The options considered: 1, authorize staff to enter into an interlocal agreement with King County, or 2, to do not authorize staff and provide direction. And the mayor recommends option 1. I'll answer any questions.
So my question is, do we have the match money set aside?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Could you please show me those properties again? Thank you.
Sure. So, yeah, the 3 on the left side. 2 are adjacent to Pack Highway, 1 off of 356, next to the Blueberry Farm.
And well, she's looking at it. Can you explain how we're going to utilize the property, or?
It's dependent on some specific restrictions for the conservation property, but it's likely a portion of the trail, maybe a trailhead could be in these locations. It's fairly restrictive on the percentage that can be impervious surface, so some of it will also just be restored into natural wetland.
Thank you.
Council President Kochmar?
Thank you very much. I'm assuming, how much is in the swim account?
1.5 million, so it could be up to, and then the match would be another 1.5, so it could be total.
No, I mean, how much do we have total in our swim account, do you know?
That's a good question.
Is that an EJ question?
Yeah, I can look it up. I don't know off the top of my head. It's a lot more than that.
Okay, is there a motion?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward the interlocal agreement to the November 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to item M, and then we'll have public comment, because item N is what you're here for, and that's next.
Good evening, Chair Dovey, Committee Member Tran, and Council Members Keith Niven, Community Development Director. So this evening, as we heard a little bit earlier, we are going to be talking about changing some development regulations for our city center core. Part of what we're doing right now, and part of the reason why we pushed these comp plan amendments and code amendments through this year in advance of our periodic update next year, is because we have pending development activity for both TC3 as well as, potentially Hillside Plaza, the Commons, and the Sound Transit properties. And getting these things right before those things come through the pipe is super advantageous for the city. So this evening, the policy question in front of you is, should the City Council amend Title 19 to include updated development standards to better reflect the urban vision desired for the city center and downtown? The proposal includes making changes to city center core code to clarify and better implement updated goals and policies, to create the downtown overlay, to add new architectural standards to that downtown, and then to make changes to notes regarding spas in city center core and city center frame. Now, one of these things is not like the others. That last one is a little bit of a hitchhiker in that we've had some recent issues with downtown businesses, and the zoning language just needs some clarity. So we hitched that one along for the ride since we were kind of messing with this section anyway. So what's in the proposed amendments? We have a new definition for developable site area, because that then feeds into what's the following definition, which is floor area ratio. And what we've done, basically our old zoning code for the city center basically maxed out building heights at different heights depending on the uses. And what we've changed to is gone to a maximum density, and that's calculated by floor area ratio. And to explain this in as simple a way as I can, a floor area ratio of 1 is a single-story building over the entire parcel. Or a floor area ratio of 1 could be a 2-story building over half of the property, or a 4-story building over a quarter of the property. And you can see the square footage of building stays the same, but how it's positioned on the property changes, and that's why there's now no building height. The building height is actually triggered by the maximum floor area ratio that we're allowing, which is 10. So that would be a 10-story building over the entire property, 20-story building over half the property, could be a 40-story building over a quarter of the property. Now, obviously, construction costs change the higher you go, and so there'll be some of those factors that property owners will be able to kind of build into their decision-making. But basically, we've moved away from maximum building height, and now the building height is regulated by either a maximum floor area ratio or a maximum number of units per acre, which we've set at 230. So that's basically all of this language here in code. I'm not going to read through it because that's a lot of words, but that's basically what we've done, is gone to that. As we talked about earlier, to the satisfaction of maybe a few in the room, and to an additional conversation, this is our downtown overlay that we've talked about, and there was conversation about adding potentially this additional city center core zoned area. There was also some conversation about maybe some of this area up here that's part of the frame. And so we'll talk about that and put together a memo for you for additional consideration. So the downtown overlay, it's really an architectural overlay. And so there's a vision, and architectural overlays are can be like a slippery slope. You can either stay really high level, or you can get down into basically regulating the color of the mullions and the windows and the type of door handles that are on the buildings. And those kind of architectural standards end up being somewhere between 100 to 200 pages in length, and I did not want to do that. So we stayed very high level, and we kept it as either appropriate or inappropriate, with an understanding that then property owners could hopefully navigate that with the clarity that they need, but without specifying what the buildings had to look like. So if you look at some of these examples for both appropriate across the top row and inappropriate across the bottom row, what you can see in the top row is kind of more natural veneers on the buildings, like stonework. There's brick. There's stonework being part of the base of the second one. There's modulation in, like, for example, this facade. This section here is set back. That provides more interest to that building than if it was all completely flat. You can see on this third one, this kind of heightened architectural treatment here at the corner. But then there's something also, if you look at the building facades along this edge, you know, the building materials change 3 times within that elevation to provide a greater level of detail. And then this last one, the cornice on top of this building, it's a really nice way to end that building before it just kind of goes up to the sky. On this inappropriate row, this first set of apartments, this is called paint blocking. And basically the developer just uses a different color of paint to provide the differentiation of this buildings. You can see there's really no other architectural detail here really at all. They just painted the different sides different colors. This actually caused a moratorium in city I used to work for because this was deemed Orlando architecture. You can see likewise this second building, kind of monolithic. The windows are all kind of flat on the surface. It's the same architectural treatment all the way up. Same for this third building. And then this last building, this cornice is referred to as an eyebrow. It's really out of scale with the rest of the building, and there are some architects that like to do something like that as what they consider a signature statement on their building, but it really does not add to the urban design. So these things are kind of described in both an appropriate and inappropriate column. Again, to give a property owner an understanding of what the city is looking for within our downtown. And these just apply to Kent's point earlier. These just apply to downtown, not the city center core, but the area that we decide is our downtown are going to get this architectural requirement, which will increase the cost of building buildings in that area because these standards say we don't want ugly buildings in our downtown. And part of the reason for this, again, we've been on a pathway to really break down a lot of the barriers in Federal Way in our existing code that were turning developers off to our city. But we also recognize that once something redevelops, it's going to be that way for the next 50 plus years. And if we get buildings that we're not interested in our downtown, they are going to sit there for the next 50 years that we're going to have to just understand that that's part of our downtown. So this is an opportunity, again, to, I think, get it right, even though this will likely add to the cost of developing. So we talked about some other things that we're talking about changing, and this is for our city center core overall. As I mentioned earlier, for non-residential, so that's commercial and hospitality and other things, we are going to go to a minimum and maximum FAR. So what this is doing is really making sure that we are no longer going to get redevelopment that's going to be just single-story surface parked projects. Those days need to be behind us for our city center core area. So, a while back, one of Mark McDonald's buildings burned down, and he's right across the street from the light rail station, and he built a single-story building that's surface parked in its place. Now, I'm sure that's what the fire insurance covered, so that's what we got, but that's because the code allowed that. And I think what we're trying to do is say, if we want a more walkable downtown with higher densities, then we actually need to provide some minimum requirements in terms of both non-residential density as well as residential. So what you're seeing here, as I mentioned earlier, we have maximums, maximum of 10 floor area ratio, maximum of 230 units per acre, and a minimum FAR of 1.5, and a minimum residential density of 46 units per acre. But in addition to what that higher density development is going to also trigger is structured parking requirements. So what we're talking about is taking the existing parking requirements, which right now could be provided in a surface parking lot if there's enough land there. But what we're saying is we want the redevelopment to actually incorporate parking into parking garages, because those huge surface parking lots are really not something that most people want to walk through to get from one building to the next. And so you really need to start to require those spaces to be converted to additional buildings, and these standards will do that. The other change of significance that I wanted to be clear to point out is suggesting to remove the possibility for emergency shelter in the downtown. So right now, if you remember, House Bill 1220 required us to include emergency housing and shelter and permanent supportive housing. That is the word I was looking for. It's been a long day. Permanent supportive housing in any zone that allows for hotels. And so we put standards in our code. We put separation requirements, but right now there could be an emergency housing, emergency shelter in our downtown. And because of what we're trying to do, suggestion is to not allow it downtown. Still allow it in other zones that have hotels, but not in downtown. So I want to be clear about that. And then I mentioned we have a little bit of a hitchhiker. So the code amendment on spas, the old language said spas and water parks, and don't ask for the history on this, spas and water parks are not permitted as a principal use in this zone. Hotels, health clubs, and similar uses may include accessory spas not exceeding 2,000 square feet in size. And the new recommended code language is, and actually I need to amend this because the Planning Commission took out the 2,000 square foot limitation. So right now it's spas and water parks are only permitted when accessory to hotels, health clubs, and similar uses. And the end of that sentence, just delete it from the and down to 2,000. So really what we're saying is spas need to be accessory to a hotel or a health club or a similar use. You can't just have a standalone spa in a retail center as an allowed use unless it was there and is non-conforming to our current code. So this is just, again, a clarity piece and doesn't really, hopefully, have much substance. We included, we had some conversations, got some public comment on the proposed code. And so there's 3 edits here that kind of came in after your packet was put together that Kent and I were both amenable to changing. One is on 19-115-094A. We would add the word architectural before equivalent to improve clarity. 115-094B3. We will allow for screening of parking to be by a 3-foot evergreen hedge in lieu of a 3-foot wall. So that was a request. And the third one is for a couple different sections to add the following language at the end of the note. Modifications may be granted by the director where commercial viability is compromised by limits on visibility, limits on convenient access or parking, or conflicts due to surrounding uses. And that has to do with that ground floor retail space on a mixed-use building. One of the concerns that the Commons expressed was because their property is so big, there may be buildings where some of those ground floor spaces really aren't going to have a lot of visibility. And if we don't put a provision in here that gives a little bit of flexibility, you might be mandating ground floor retail space that might die just because of its lack of visibility. So these are some edits that came in after your packet was done. I wanted to put a spotlight on those. And then option 1 is recommended approval of the proposed code amendments. Option 2, do not recommend approval and provide direction to staff. And the mayor's recommendation is option 1. And obviously, I'm here for any questions you guys might have.
I got a couple questions, and then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Honda. How do these codes compare to the cities around us? We just went through a couple years of everybody getting development, and we were left behind because of different things that we had in our codes, or not codes, but we had to change. How do these changes compare to what we see around us?
So I'm going to answer that a few different ways. One is the architectural standards that are being proposed in here are under the guidelines section, and those are administered by city staff. There are cities out there that have separate architecture review committees or architectural boards. Seattle, Bellevue, Issaquah are examples of cities that actually have a third-party process to go through the architectural details, and that tends to be not well received by property owners, developers. So I think from a procedural standpoint, we are adding another layer to the cake, but it's a small step instead of a big step. In terms of the going to the FAR and the density as maximums as opposed to building height, like a straight, you can do an 85-foot tall building and whatever that means, it means. This is more flexible for a developer. So we worked with, we actually received comments from 3 different developers looking at our city center downtown area. This 230 units per acre originally started out at 150. And so I heard from different folks looking to develop and ultimately ended up at 230, which all of them agreed was enough density that would fit all of the projects that they were envisioning for downtown Federal Way. So I think from a minimum maximum development capacity perspective, I think this is good as well. So I saved the best for last. So the requirement for structured parking. This one, I think, most new residential incorporate structured parking. If I'm going to build a 5/1 or 5/2 apartment building, it's going to have structured parking anyway. You look at the building that's under construction, it's kind of done, at First and 348. That parking at the corner, the tall building, is underneath that building. All the buildings that we're looking at for TC3 are going to have structured parking. It will be 100% structured parked. This little bit of 5% of not including all of it is assuming that there is going to be some visitors, convenience, surface parking that should be accommodated, and so we kind of bumped it down to 95. Office, again, most office that's going to build in our downtown area should be Class A office. Class A office is going to have structured parking. So this allocation of 75 is probably, we have a bigger issue with remote work and office. So I'm not worried about that because there's probably nobody looking at building office right now anyway. Retail, 40%, that's a big number. Honestly, I would say if you guys were looking at any of these that's probably going to push somebody out of their comfort zone, it would be requiring some of the retail to be in a structured parking. The rest of these, I think, are fairly simple. So that's the one. If you were looking for something that you might want to push in a certain direction, that would be the one.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So vibrant building colors would not be allowed in the downtown core.
That is the suggestion from your staff. Now, obviously, if that is something that the city council felt like you know, I want to see a flamingo pink building because it's going to be T-Mobile, or, you know, there's something else that's going to be metal clad and be more futuristic. We can absolutely go that direction. You know, this is more kind of a, you know, the Pacific Northwest, contemporary Pacific Northwest is kind of a riff on the Chicago School of Architecture. It's really more kind of substantive, kind of traditional architecture that is nice and comfortable, and that is not flashy. So that's the pathway your staff went down. If the council feels like it should be more Vegas-like, I can write standards that are like that. That's up to you guys.
So my question on the
Yeah.
building colors is, you and I have talked about murals on buildings.
Oh, absolutely.
So would that prevent, if we can get murals on buildings, because I think that would add to the beauty of downtown, would that prevent that?
No, actually, they had suggested, I'm sorry, so the Commons, they are in the audience. We had talked a little bit about a certain amount of allowance for flat walls. And I think that's a different conversation. I think if there's ways we can promote murals in our downtown or city center core area, that'd be awesome. I think what this would say is that there is a requirement to modulate the building at certain intervals, but it does not preclude having a certain flat canvas that you could potentially use as a mural backdrop. So
Okay.
that's allowed.
My second question is the flat roof buildings, instead of what you showed, would that allow for rooftop outdoor spaces?
Absolutely. One of the things that we've heard from the Commons as well as from Trent on TC3 is the 100 square feet per unit is really difficult to meet for an urban product. So having things like rooftop decks is a must if they're going to get even close to that standard. So yeah, absolutely.
So is it true that in TC3 area, because it's the tallest point in our downtown, that you would be able to see the sound as well as the mountain if you were on top of the building?
I have seen that written. I don't know that to be true. Actually, I would say that probably the best person to ask would be a gentleman named Bruce Honda, who's flown a drone off over
I may see him later.
over that property, if you know that person. So you could ask Bruce how high he flew his drone. I think that would give a good understanding of, because you can definitely see the sound from that property. It's just how high up do you need to be.
Okay.
And so I don't know the answer to that.
And then my last question is on parking garages, which I know we've talked about. I like parking garages because I don't like surface parking, but I don't want them to look like a parking garage. And can we have that somewhere where they look like a building but not a parking garage? I don't want to see cars.
Yeah, there's design standards in 19115 about putting grills up and other things to block out the view of garages or the cars, so you just don't see. So it doesn't look like just a bunch of stacked decks with cars parked in it. There's some stuff in the code for that.
I mean, there's this cute little town in Illinois. It's a historical little downtown, and it took me about 10 or 12 years before I realized that one of the buildings downtown, in this little historic downtown, was a parking garage, because it looks like all of the other buildings.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to realize that it's parking, but you can't tell. And that's what I'd like to see in our downtown.
Absolutely, I would too.
Thank you.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Got a couple, you had mentioned the emergency housing and the permanent supportive housing. I noticed they're still in there. Are you saying that you're looking at wanting to remove those, or what would that be, a second step later in the future, or?
Can I explain this one, actually, Keith? So, a couple things. First of all, under the proposed changes, emergency housing and shelter would not be allowed within the overlay. Permanent supportive housing still would be. So that's the first thing I want to be clear about that. The second thing is that emergency housing would still be required in the city center core, i.e. in the zone. It just wouldn't be allowed in the subset of the city center core that is affected by the architectural overlay. So that's why it remains in there, because the use is still allowed in that zone, which, by the way, is the state law requirement. That's why it has to be that way. But it would not be allowed in the subset, again, of the zone that's covered by the architectural overlay.
So council member, if you go to the use tables, those bulky use tables,
Well,
and
that's
you
what-
go
that's
to.
what I was looking at.
And you go to emergency housing, if you look at the first column, it says, there's a note that says C note X, and I don't know what number it is. If you go to that note number, it's gonna say it's not allowed in the downtown.
Oh, okay, because I saw that, I was looking through and it has so much writing. So-
I know,
So I just
sorry.
wrote down the
You know-
pages and I wrote down the FWRC so I could just bring those up if necessary.
You know, the city attorney and I would both like to redo all of that, but that's a huge endeavor, so we put that off.
Okay, so I think that kind of answered my question on that one. The other one is the 1.5 FAR. I know exactly the building you're talking about got burnt down because a couple businesses I know right next to it, and we didn't understand why it didn't get changed into something else. So what does a 1.5 look like? If they were required at 1.5, how would that building have changed?
Sure. So on that property, instead of that kind of single-story pancake footprint, you could have a two-story building over half that size, and with the extra square footage, you would need probably additional parking. So that would have ended up with probably like a little two-story parking garage next to it. So you would have had a bigger building, probably on that same footprint, with now this requirement for the 1.5.
Okay, and that could have been mixed occupancy, it could have been commercial on the bottom.
Yeah, it could have been residential above it, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, and the other one is, what does 130 units in an acre look like? How many, like, were we talking like single bedrooms, 40, I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, so, it's, it's not going to, it's gonna be bedroom independent. It's just gonna be units, right? So the square footage of that building is gonna ultimately be a factor of whether it's studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, because each of those have a different size. So for example, 230 units per acre, which is our cap. If you had 750 square foot units, all right, that's kind of like maybe a small 2-bedroom or a bigger 1-bedroom, that would be a 4-story building.
Oh.
Over the entire property.
Okay.
That's 230.
Not as big as I thought it would be, but okay, it gives me an idea. And the last one I had was, everything we're talking about, the 4 parcels that Sound Transit owns are required to fall with these
Yes, if
guidances.
you guys approve this.
Oh, I see the catch. All right, that's all I had, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember
I
President?
just thought I'd mention that in 2008, when we were previously discussing this same parcel in the downtown, we did fly a drone, and at that time, they were much larger, but above 8 stories, you could see a view, and you were above the Bonneville power lines, and at 12 stories, you could see all the way to downtown and the sound.
I have one last question. When we talk about the architectural requirements, you made the comment it's going to increase the costs. What are we doing on the flip side, to decrease the costs so people want to spend the extra money to develop in Federal Way?
So, let me answer that maybe a couple ways if I can remember it. So the first thing is, yeah, it's probably going to increase the cost than what they would have otherwise done. But what I think most developers would tell you is that if everybody is being held to the same standard of that higher cost, then all of those residential units or retail spaces within that area that built to that higher cost and therefore needs higher rental rates will be able to charge it because it looks nicer. There's a certain amount of, I think, increase that you get from kind of the eye candy part of it. In terms of what are we doing to decrease the costs, I think what I would say is right now we've already pushed a lot of things through over this year, it feels like we've been amending the code continuously all year to try and to make ourselves more competitive with our peer cities around us. I think what you're seeing now is those folks that have been waiting, those bigger property owners, are coming in, and I think that the changes to the development agreement code is also part of this conversation to make it clearer that it is intended to increase both the predictability and the flexibility for developers and applicants. And so some of these things are going to be a case-by-case opportunity for property owners. You know, as we sit down with the Commons and start to talk about how to get them to a place where they're ready to redevelop, there's going to be some departures from code. There's going to be some negotiations that city staff and the property owner will go through to get to a place where it's been optimized. And that will then ultimately hopefully be balanced and will come forward to the city council for consideration. So that's going to happen, I anticipate, with the Commons. It will happen with Sound Transit. They have also said they will pursue a development agreement for their property, and Hillside Plaza has just hired consultants to basically put together a development agreement for them, and then they will sell their property, is what we've been told.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Which property is that? I don't know the.
Just the north, it's the one with it used to be Gene Juarez, I think it's Paul
That
Mitchell
whole
Salon.
section?
The Horseshoe.
Yep, okay.
I don't see any other questions. Councilman Tran?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on November 21st, 2023.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're now going to move to item N, and
Public comment?
yeah, public comment for, I don't have your name to say who you are, but if you could come up to the podium and you have 3 minutes to address the council before we go into that discussion. And thank you for coming up from San Diego. We appreciate it.
Thank you, good evening, and thank you, Chairman Dovey and council members again. My name is Ann Giggy, and I'm an attorney with Hillis, Clark, Martin, and Peterson. We've been land use counsel for Jeff Stock and the Enchanted Parks for many years. You've had a long agenda, so I will keep my remarks brief. I wanted to, we've reviewed the staff report, and I want to thank staff for that careful analysis of the proposal. This is the proposal to amend the concomitant development agreement for the park. I just wanted to do a quick refresh from when we were here before about what the proposed amendment includes and what it does not include. And I'll start with the latter, in that the amendment does not include any project development proposal. And it couldn't if it wanted to, because the existing lease for the park goes on for another 6 years. So that lease is in place until 2029 at the very least. But moreover, the property owner and the park operator are currently deep in negotiations for a long-term lease extension to follow on the termination of the current lease. And so, you know, Jeff is very supportive of a future park. The first thing in the amendment is to extend the term of the agreement, the concomitant agreement, for 30 years beyond the effective date of the amendment. And that gives the park operator a much better runway to be able to look for financing for significant park improvements that he would like to make. A lot of new rides, new improvements to the park, and so having that longer runway and having that firm term in place is very helpful for that purpose. When the park had to close down in 2020 for a full season due to COVID, at that point, it was sort of a catalyst to think about, well, what if something happened where the park really did have to close down permanently? How should the property function in that situation? It's a 65-acre property in a single ownership, and it would be very difficult to have that property go vacant, dormant, idle for a long period of time. And so what the property owner would like would be to kind of review the uses that are allowed under the agreement, saw a couple that seemed like viable market contenders, but they're subject to some pretty tight restrictions. And so the amendment includes modifying the restrictions on 2 uses. So for hotels on the property, they're currently subject to a 5-acre limit. He's asking to remove that 5-acre limit, so that opens it up for destination hotels or conference centers, that type of thing, if the park were to close, and that needed to happen in the future. And the other one, as everyone is aware, is for warehousing and distribution, which is currently allowed as an accessory use, subject to a 25% site limit on the property. We're proposing to make it allowed as a principal use and be able to, do the entire property. And the property owner feels, just as with the park, that in that situation with a single user like that, there's much better ability to be able to control access, ingress, egress, choose the points where traffic comes and goes from the site, and do those things. 30 seconds, okay. And again, so what really happens is if we get these uses entitled now, then what you have is years off of the conversion of the property from a closed park to another viable use. And so you're diminishing the years that there'd be no tax revenue from the property. You're diminishing the years where it's vacant and subject to vandalism or a target for encampments, whatever those problems are. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Keith Niven. Item N.
Good evening, Chair Dovey, Committee Member Tran, City Council members. Again, Keith Niven, Community Services Director. So this evening, as we heard from the public, we are talking about a development agreement amendment for Wild Waves. And the policy question in front of the City Council is, should the city approve the proposed amendments to the Wild Waves Concomitant Development Agreement? And I'll explain those in a sec. So the development agreement history. In 1998, the development agreement was adopted for Wild Waves, and it has been amended 3 times since then, in 2000, 2002, and last was in 2017. And then right now, we're considering the 4th potential amendment in 2023. The amendment, the proposed amendment includes amending the hours of operation. Right now, hours of operation are limited to 10:30 a.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. And the request is to limit that window of limited operation only for the recreational facility use. In other words, if they were to potentially add a hotel, if your hotel didn't allow people there past 10 o'clock at night, it's probably not a very successful hotel. So I think what they've asked for and this change to the hours of operation go along with the potential change of uses, which we'll get to in a second. And the other amendment here was to say that other uses would be limited by the city's noise regulations. The proposed amendment also includes for traffic and mitigation and impact fees, applications for future non-regional commercial recreation facility, in other words, non-Wild Waves, uses or development shall be subject to SEPA, transportation impact fees, and concurrency management. So basically what this is saying is this amendment, unlike most development agreements where property owners are trying to get some sort of predictability, they're on these particular issues, they're getting no predictability. They're basically saying we have to comply with what the city is going to have in the future. We're not vesting ourselves to anything that's in place today. And if I get any of this wrong, Kent, please jump in.
Sure, let me jump in right there then, actually.
All right.
With a slight nuance there that, so the current park use has mitigated impacts that are associated with that park use up to a certain point. And so this language is intended to provide credit in the future for the impacts that were indeed mitigated as part of the park use, as distinguished from impacts that might be different from the park use. For instance, impacts from truck traffic that might occur at different hours of the day or night from traffic associated with the water park use. So in other words, just to sum that up, it's to give them credit for the impacts that they have mitigated and nothing more.
Okay. So also, as you heard from the public comment, one of the amendments is to modify the existing agreement's term. Right now, it's in effect until 2037, and the request is to add 30 years starting this year. So basically, it would take the agreement until 2053. Also, here's the permitted uses. So right now, it would be to remove the acreage limitation, which right now is 5 acres on hotels, and allow it as a primary use on the entire site. And for warehousing and distribution, it would be to remove the limitation of 25% and allow it as a primary use on the entire site. So those are the kind of the big ones right there, are the land use changes. So review procedures, and this is a clarification, require additional site plan and landscape plan detail to be provided for the non-theme park uses. So in other words, if they were to come in with hotel or warehousing, they would need to do site plan and landscape plan review with those applications. This is just a map showing the public notice. So this is, so the Wild Waves is the area in pink, kind of in the middle of the donut hole. And the areas, the properties that are in the yellow all received a notice in the mail about the proposed changes to the development agreement for Wild Waves. We did receive a couple comments on Friday, and I asked Sarah to make sure that you guys got those, and I saw that she did that. Thank you, Sarah. So basically, there is an email from Jeff Stock on the right and an email from Kieran Burke on the left, both kind of talking about the fact that they see the theme park running for a number of years. And I think that was kind of in response to some of the public comment. We got concerns over traffic-related impacts associated if the property were to transition to other uses.
So Keith, one thing in that letter, if you can go back, it says that they intend to renew the lease at Wild Waves for an additional 30 years. Is that what I understand, the first?
The one on the left?
One on the left says, to Jeff.
So the one on the left says, "Dear Jeff, on behalf of Premier Parks LLC, I just wanted to confirm our recent discussions that we intend to renew our lease for Wild Waves for an additional 30 years plus options."
So if they renew the lease, then they pretty much covers till 2053.
Obviously,
Potentially.
we're not going to know. I mean, a lease can be broken. I don't want to speculate on that.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Mayor's recommendation for forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading and public hearing on November 21st at City Council. And with that, I am here for questions.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you.
Actually, we're going to go to
Okay.
Councilmember McDaniels. I haven't let him go first yet.
Couple quick ones. So if the park ends up not becoming a park and becomes a hotel, or they add a hotel or something happens to become the transportation thing, I assume that goes through a whole lot of permitting and processing and a lot of road construction will be, because I know the road right there is just not changed ever, really.
So if they were to come in for different uses on the property, you know, that would have to go through the city's permitting process, which includes both a traffic analysis, concurrency review. So if they need to improve roadways, that is part of the permitting process that we have applicants go through.
Okay. And the second part would be is, currently it's, the hotel change would allow the hotel to be built with the current park in play, or is if the park closes, that could have the hotel? Could you have both?
You could have both.
Okay, but the actual transportation is only if the park is not, or could it be the park a hotel and transportation all going down.
So, so,
I'll leave it at that.
so the park can continue operating. If you want to say, take like a giant parking lot and build a parking garage and a hotel next to it, that hotel and the parking garage would have to go through the permit processing, the traffic review, all of those kind of things before it could be built. So basically, and Kent mentioned, they have kind of credits in the system now for the existing park. As long as that's in play, you know, they can keep that there and put some other stuff around it if they can fit it in. Or they could convert part of the theme park into some of these other uses. And then if they put trips back, they might be able to get credit for those towards the new use, but likely the new use will have more traffic impacts than whatever park recovery they would have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just was trying to figure out if the park is no longer a viable option, if that's when the transportation, I figure the hotel is going to try to be a two-in-one kind of concept, but the transportation feature of that factor, I thought that was going to be, if the hotel does not pencil out, that was a fallback, not at the same time. That's what I was trying to get clarification on.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So the change of hours would be in case a hotel ever was built.
Or warehousing. So obviously, you know, there's times when, you know, truck traffic is typically earlier in the morning, but it also runs all day. So, you know, limiting it from 9:30 to 10 is fine for a theme park that's not going to open super early and not stay open super late, except for I think they get some opportunities for special events. But for other uses, having this kind of bookends is problematic for normal operations, I think.
So why would we need to change that now? Why couldn't it be amended to the agreement later if such a use occurred?
I think the applicant's desire, and obviously the applicant can speak for themselves since they're here, but I believe what you'd hear from the applicant is that they want to get everything into place now with these modifications that would allow them to pivot from their current business model when that makes sense for them to do so. And so the idea is we don't want to come back to council to have to yet again go through another process of negotiating a development agreement amendment in the future, which might take multiple months. We'd like to just proceed forward with permitting. And so I think from their perspective, this is a needed change in order to facilitate those additional uses that would be allowed as principal uses on the site.
And the reason I ask is because I'm hearing concerns from people who live around there and who are concerned about that. I'm also hearing a lot of concerns about the warehousing portion of this. When I talked with Jeff Stock last year or sometime about this, he told me that was going to be garages with trucks, you know, not what we have over on the Weyerhaeuser property. But now I'm not so sure, listening to you, that that's not what we would get here. And so listening to the folks who have called me and emailed me and said, how can this possibly be? Why would the council agree to this, seeing what was built on the Weyerhaeuser property? Now I'm concerned as to exactly what warehousing means and if there's a way we can make sure it's not the warehousing that we see over on the Weyerhaeuser property.
As to the warehousing use, I believe that the proposed revisions to this would allow a use substantially similar to the warehousing you're talking about on the Weyerhaeuser property.
That's not what I understood when I talked with Jeff Stock, so.
So it's really, I don't know if the applicant's attorney wants to say anything. So right now we have very blunt land uses in our zoning code. You know, basically warehousing allows for a lot of different types of uses. It could allow for something like that kind of garage town type thing that we have kind of just south of where OMF is. But it also allows the giant warehouse that's really serving the Port of Tacoma. And it's difficult for the city because we don't get to pick the users on the property. Once we approve a land use, it is allowed. that there's little control we have over the actual end user.
So with all the residential we have around there, I don't think that's a good use for that site, in my opinion. And I'm concerned that, I mean, I don't want the park to ever go away. I think it's just such a great thing we have in Federal Way. It brings people from all over to Federal Way to go to Wild Waves and Enchanted Village. And so I don't ever want it to go away. And I think a hotel there would be awesome to make it a really cool location. But I don't want to see warehousing there, so I'm really concerned about this. And I agree with the people that live around there that I wouldn't want to live around. I'd rather have the park there than warehousing any day, so.
And I don't know, it looks like the applicant's attorney stood up. Do you want to engage with her about that at all, or?
Do you guys, or?
I mean, we can ask that question.
And again, I'll ask a point of order since I have lawyers in the room. This is not the public hearing. This is really just, I mean, consider this an informational opportunity to potentially maybe feather a future conversation at the public hearing, but I want to be careful that we're not creating another odd record.
And so my commentary is this, that it's fine for us to go into whatever level of detail you'd like to go into tonight. However, everything that we discuss substantively tonight, you should also discuss substantively at council at the public hearing.
I don't need to discuss it then tonight. I know that the public is going to come and discuss this. So I'm okay with stating my feelings about it, and I don't need more information at this point, but.
So maybe the applicant can incorporate that into their presentation at the public hearing.
I don't know what the rest of the people up here want, so.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion, this is going to come out of committee, I mean, if there's 2 votes, and then we're going to have a public hearing, and there is no, we have public here, but none of the people that you've said have called you or sent emails. I've seen 3 emails so far. I think it would be wise if, as a land use, that we make the decision, do we want to move it forward? I mean, I want to move it forward personally. I think that that piece of property, seeing that they want to potentially lease it for 30 more years and maybe bring a hotel and do the things that you're talking about, is not bad for the city. And then, but we'll have a public hearing where we can actually have those discussions. Would that, everybody okay with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine. I think that we need to have a very public discussion about this.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to, I mean, the agreement doesn't have to include everything that is requested.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to move it forward?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading and public hearing on November 21st, 2023.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay, thank you, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions and a lot more to come up in the next time this hits us.
I'm sure there will be. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to progress updates on Sound Transit. Mr. Smith?
Yes, good evening again. So again, Ken Smith, the City Public Works Department. I'm here for the updates on the Sound Transit activities in the city. And not too much going on that's changed. Storm drainage, landscaping, plinths, noise walls, system duct bank, ballast installation, OCS testing and installation, fencing installation, MSE wall construction, and then rail delivery installation and welding, and then signal house and traction power substation work is still continuing, and that's for everything north of 317th. For the city center, still in phase closure of 23rd Avenue South. They are progressing towards a shift to two-way traffic before the moratorium starts, which is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Additional concrete roadway work is still ongoing on the other half of 23rd Avenue. They just poured some last week. Roadway work continues for the new internal roads. I believe they're grading for sidewalks. Sewer, water, additional utility work ongoing along 317th and 23rd. Also station work ongoing, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, elevator and escalator work, fire line and ceiling panel installation. Construction of the garage also ongoing, similar, plumbing, HVAC, fire protection, electrical rough-in. The end-of-line facility interior work is ongoing also, door installation, ceiling installation, and floor installation. As far as the operations and maintenance facility south, I don't have any significant updates since the last AOTC meeting. They're progressing with their DIS, so they'll start answering all the questions that get submitted soon, and then we'll have responses at some point. Similarly, with Tacoma Dome Link Extension, I don't have any significant updates, so I will answer any questions.
Seeing no blue mics, you must have given us a lot of great information, and nobody has any burning desire to know more. Thank you very all.
Thanks.
And we will adjourn our meeting. Thank you.